This is the Free Heel Life Podcast, episode number 109. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Free Heel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And what's up, my friends? Monday. We're back again. We're going to talk about Telemark stuff. I love Mondays. It's the best. Because I get to connect with all of you out there and talk about the best turn on snow. And who doesn't love that? For all you new listeners, welcome. If you haven't listened to the podcast, thanks for checking in. Hopefully you're digging Telemark or you're looking into it. And hopefully you're finding some friendly folks in your zone to show you the ways of the force. And hopefully you're liking it. We all know it's hard at first, but stick with it. It's going to get even better. And you just got to get to the powder turns. Then it gets really good, which might take you a little while. But anyways, I never welcome new listeners. So if you're out there, thanks for listening. If you're old listeners, thanks for listening. There's some of you diehards out there that have literally listened to every episode. Thank you very much. I surely appreciate it. So not a lot to check in with other than some of the events I talked about last week. I'm just going to do a quick overview reminder of those events because I really want to keep them top of mind as we kind of head into the new year. And I've got them a little more in sequence this week. So take notes. So Pennsylvania is going to be the first one. On the western side near Pittsburgh, Seven Springs, Pennsylvania is hosting Telepalooza. January 8th and 9th, 2022. Check out more details at telemarker.org. Then, Midwest, Michigan, to be specific, even more specific, Pine Knob, Michigan, January 15th, Free Heel Life Midwest is teaming up with Motor City Tele for a Telemark demo day. It's going to be a good time. Make sure you get to Michigan if you're in that zone and support. And we love teaming up with friends like Motor City Tele, who I've had on the podcast. If you haven't listened to it, check it out. Then, moving on into February 26 and 27, Vermont at Bromley, you're going to have the 36th annual Corey Anderson Telemark Festival. And that's one of the oldest ones. 36. So that's awesome. So get there, Vermont, New Hampshire, New England, Bromley. Get there and do it. Then World Telemark Day, March 6th. Don't forget, you can do that anywhere. And following that, March 11, 12, Mad River Glen Free Heel Frolic. That's all I got for the newsroom and notes today. Again, just keep it top of mind. Support your local Telemark events. If you don't have a local Telemark event, use World Telemark Day to just gather some people together and keep it going. It all starts with one person being stoked and then just finding the time to get together and kind of build it up. So, I'm feeling energetic today. This is fantastic. Now, I'm always energetic, but I love seeing these events, and that gets me fired up. What also gets me fired up is my guest today. He is an old friend of mine. He's someone who's mentored me through my writing endeavors in Telemark, which I greatly appreciate. He's taught me so much. And he grew up in Jeffersonville, Vermont, where he learned to ski at a very young age. He did some Telemark racing on the East Coast in the early 90s before heading out west to attend Western State Colorado University in Gunnison, Colorado, right near Crested Butte. He worked on the college newspaper during that time, and this was his introduction into ski riding. After years of ski patrolling in the winters and pounding nails in the summers, along with some freelance writing, he was presented with the opportunity to acquire Backcountry Magazine with some others. And they released their first issue as the new owners in 2002. He's always been a huge supporter of telemark skiing, both through his own endeavors and supporting others like myself. And I'm very honored he took the time to talk with me today. So please welcome my good friend, Adam Howard. All right, Howie. Welcome to the Free Heel Life podcast, my friend. How you doing?
Thanks, Josh. It's great to be here. I'm great.
I'm stoked to have you on, man. It's we haven't caught up in a while, so this will be good for us to catch up, and I was excited to get you on here, as you've been part of my personal telemark journey, if you will. So,
and you mine.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy. We were just talking. You just got off the hill, first day of skiing. How's Vermont holding up compared to the rest of the universe?
I would say the skiing in Vermont right now looks about like the skiing in Colorado. A lot of brown and some one ways down.
I feel like you guys.
But it's.
I was just gonna say, it seems like you guys you need less to cover up to get started than out here, but I could be wrong.
It depends on where you are. Like up here in the northern Green Mountains, it's pretty bony, so we need more snow. Southern Vermont, their mountains are a little rounder, if you will, and I think they tend to get less snow, so they do a lot more summer grooming. By that I mean they kind of make sure their bed is smooth, so they don't need as much snow. The leafy. We got boulders and water bars everywhere.
I was gonna say, yeah. So you're, I guess we didn't even say where you're skiing, but I'm assuming you were at Smuggler's Notch, because that's right there.
Yep, that's where I was.
Which it is. I feel like that. I've only skied there a couple times back with you, and I mean, it definitely seems a little rockier and kind of more. I don't know, not Mad. I don't know if anything's like Mad River, but kind of reminds me more of that, like a little bit more terrain features and stuff.
I think Smugs and Mad River are similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to kind of, you have such an interesting story, because you grew up skiing there, and like you grew up in Jeffersonville, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So did you grow up just skiing, like your family? I don't even know if I know this. I don't know if we've ever dug into this, but I was curious, like, what it was like growing up. I mean, Jeffersonville is currently where Backcountry Magazine, alpinist, cross-country skier, I think. Yep. 3 titles? Is there a 4th title now? I can't remember.
Yeah, Mountain Flyer, which is the Mountain Bike Journal.
Gotcha. Okay. But I mean, yeah, if people haven't been to that part of the country, it's very unique. I mean, Jeffersonville is what, like 500 people, I think?
The village itself is about 400, and the greater town is maybe about 3,000 now.
Really?
Yep.
So the greater town meaning... Town. So greater town meaning sort of the outskirts and the farms and stuff, or what? Like that sounds like such an East Coast thing. Like,
how granular do you want to go, dude?
I don't want to. I don't know. I'm just curious, because we don't talk like that. I always say once you cross the Mississippi, dude, there's like this whole different vernacular, like the greater old town.
Yeah, it's old. So in Vermont, and I can't really speak about other New England towns, but there's a lot of little incorporated like mill towns that are within a bigger town. So like Jeffersonville is a village, and it's within the town of Cambridge. And so Smuggler's Notch is in Cambridge, actually.
Wow. See, I didn't know that. And I even lived there for a summer. So, yeah. But did you grow up skiing? Parents were skiers? I mean, what was it like growing up in a town? I mean, a village of that size.
So I don't have much to compare it to, because it was my life, right? So it was, my parents are skiers, right? And honestly, my dad is who turned me on to tele skiing. And my mom was a ski instructor at Smugs, and she did that so we could get a family pass, and you know what that's like. And and we were just lucky to. My family's an old farm family from here, and so I was riding up the chairlift with my 14-year-old daughter today, and just we were both marveling and at how lucky we were to just kind of be born here into a place with skiing. Because can you imagine like being born in a place where you were never given the opportunity to go skiing? I can't imagine. So pretty fortunate.
Yeah. I mean, even me growing up in Salt Lake, it always blew my mind. I mean, like, I think back in those days, it was like 3 to 5% skied, if that. I mean, there were so many people that were like 30 minutes, 40 minutes from the resort and didn't go up there, you know?
Yeah. Ski towns, Salt Lake's a little different, but, ski town, the term is a misnomer because, it assumes that everybody that lives there skis. And I think it tends to gloss over, things like poverty. And, not everybody has the opportunity to get up on the hill. We started a program, 15 years ago that would give all our kids in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade here at our school free skiing for a week. And they don't go to school for a week, kind of like the Austrian model. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody that lived here had the opportunity to frankly just get to the top of that mountain. The skiing was a byproduct of it, but that's been really special and I think quite rare as we've done it for so long. It's not everybody gets the shot, even in a ski town, and I think like the Doug Coombs Foundation, which you may have heard of in Jackson, Emily started that for in recognition of the Hispanic population that was living there doing, a lot of labor jobs. And those kids never had gone skiing. Most of them, that wasn't part of their culture, yet they lived there. So many people overlook that, right?
Yeah, no, that's, and that was one thing I think, having the opportunity to go back east and work with you and actually be around there, some of those resorts, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think smugglers will probably fall into this, but one thing that was always really striking to me is that a lot of these New England towns sort of had a local ski hill, and it seemed to me, I don't know if a lot of them were just like post World War II, kind of, they just seemed to have a really like familial vibe to them, where it was a family thing. There was a rope tow or, a couple chairs, and like, it was a lot of them had lights, and it just seemed like probably, I don't know, like, 1950s on, it was like kind of this family thing where you could actually go ski. And I mean, of course there's stuff like that out west, but they're just driving around these little towns. It seems like that it was just kind of part of that culture, and it was like a real family thing, like you're saying. You grew up in a family where you could go ski.
And it was like that, and it was even more like that. I mean, there was a time when a state like Vermont had 40 little rope tows or more. I don't know the number, and not just Vermont, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, you name it. And it was those little hills, some of which, back in the early days, they didn't have a tow at all. They would just, they'd skin and ski, and kind of cross country ski. And, that was like the feeder system for these bigger ski areas. Like, Killington is a great example of a 60s era ski area that emerged as a destination for people that may have grown up skiing on these little hills in little towns, or even down in Boston. There's little hills around Boston that people used to ski.
Yeah, it's here's an interest. This is. Do you think it'll go back to that? Because I've often wondered. You kind of talked about the accessibility factor, and there's obviously some populations that like you were talking about in Jackson Hole, people that work there that can't necessarily afford to ski. But I mean, just even the average, I mean, if you're not a ski bum, you're not getting a pass, it's getting harder and harder, I think. I mean, there's places with tickets over $200 a day now, you know, and it often makes me wonder, like, and do you think it'll go back? Do you think there'll be like a kind of a niche for like small family resorts in the future? Like where it's just like, hey, we've got like a chair, or do you think that'll never, that era is just a bygone era? I keep thinking like, how can we keep making this a family thing when you can't, you know, necessarily get a pass to go as a family, you know?
That's the question, right? And I think there's a couple answers. Unfortunately, none of them are great, because the fact of the matter is the snow line is continuing to creep up, right, over time. And these little hills, all those states I mentioned, Virginia, North Carolina, you know, the further south you get, the more those little hills in town don't exist anymore. Because you know, it gets to a point where you have to have snowmaking, you know, and so going back to that, I think is going to be tough. I honestly think, you know, the Scottish model might be a possibility, where they ski on carpet. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I haven't been there. I have seen that.
I've never skied on it myself, but like it's a thing, and it's a weird thing, but it's a thing, and they turn out some really good technical skiers, and they feed a lot of great expats into the ski culture in Central Europe, from Scotland, and yeah, they ski on carpet. They learn how to ski on carpet.
Yeah, that's wild.
Do I want to see that? It's kind of like it's a little bit, I don't know the term. There's some science fiction. There's some science fiction term I think I can't come up with, but
you're gonna be like telling your kids, like, back in the day we had this white stuff that fell from the sky, and then we slid on it. Now you just get green carpet or white carpet, whatever. Well, that's a good point. I mean, the snowmaking, I always really forget about that, because there was a lot more natural snow probably at these places, and they weren't. I mean, the water thing's an issue too. I mean, hell, I live in a state where like there's literally like towns running out of water, you know, and people don't really think about that, you know. You know, like it's an actual issue, you know, not just the change in snow lines per se, but the water to even produce snow if you have the cold weather. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, well, you've crushed my dreams that small New England towns are going to pop back up with rope tows. I was curious what your thoughts were on that. I want to ask, like, you brought up your dad was the first one that taught, like, that introduced you to telemark skiing. Like, when did that whole thing come about with you? You know, at what point in life?
So when I was a kid, my folks were big into what they called backcountry skiing. And backcountry skiing to them was like, you know, ungroomed point to point skiing in the woods, you know, and whenever they'd find a hill to go down, they would make teleturns down it. And this is I guess they got really into this maybe in the late 70s, early 80s, and they were there's a really rich cross country ski culture in Vermont. A lot of people would look at what they did, and I'm talking like light touring gear, like 3-pin leather, you know, Merrill XCDs, Fisher E99s, or Rossi Chamois, you know, that kind of ski, double camber, 210s. That's the kind of gear they were on. And, you know, wool pants and knickers and backpacks. And that was their version of cross-country skiing. They called it backcountry. That was what it was to them at the time. And so I grew up doing that, and, you know, clearing trail. And we just, you know, it was telly to us wasn't a thing. Like, I wasn't, you know, my North Star at the time in the 80s when I was a little kid wasn't Crested Butte and skiing the lifts on who knows what they were on at the time. But it was just that. It was touring, really. And so, and then I took that gear. I had a pair of Rossi Chamois and a pair of old Merrill rental boots with Velcro to close them. And they were those low cut XCDs. They were the Legends, actually, which was the lower one. And a pair of Dover 3-pin bindings. There used to be a binding manufacturer here in Vermont. And I went up on these chamois and skied at the mountain at Smugs. It was horrifying. You know, those.
I was just gonna say, how did that go on the chamois?
I think I took one run. And realized that the next thing I needed to do was mount up a pair of alpine rock skis with the same setup, because I couldn't, on any kind of hard surface, it was treacherous, you know?
Yeah.
But it was a start, and that was kind of where it started. And I might have been a junior or sophomore in high school at the time. And then from there, you know, went out to Gunnison and Crested Butte and met a lot of other weirdos. And then we just started, you know, taking the next step as we could afford, like the Granite Gear telecuffs and
oh man,
you know,
that's a good history call out right there, man. I forgot about the Granite Gear. And what he's referring to, there was this company called Granite Gear, and they made it. It's kind of like around the era Super Comp, the Merrill Super Comps with the plastic cuff built in, but these were like a cuff with like almost like a gator stirrup that you could modify your low cut boots, like he was explaining, and you could make your own lateral stability.
It gave you like blisters on your shins and like 2% more power in your turn.
I don't think those were padded. They didn't have pads on the front. That's probably why, huh?
I think they did. They did have a little padding, and as I recall, they had like a volley strap, and it might have been like, gosh, I don't know the history of the volley strap, but they had something like a volley strap holding it all together, and there were like 4 of them.
Yep.
You know, and it was like one would go under the arch of your foot, and then you'd have 3 maybe up above the top of your boot. It was
that's so funny. I can't believe. Yeah, I totally forgot. I don't. You might be the first one to bring up the Granite Gear telecuff.
Well, you know, this is
a weird one.
This is the time folks were taking like alpine cuffs and modifying them to you know, leather telly boots to give you a little bit more power. But this is pre Super Comp.
Yeah,
for sure.
What year did you go out to? Because you went to Western, right? In Gunnison. 92.
Oh yeah, 92 to 97.
Yeah, I mean, then literally, yeah, the plastic boot came out in 92. So, I mean, it might have taken a while to propagate out to Gunnison, Colorado. I don't know. Maybe the old Alpineer would have carried it back then. I don't know if that was. I think that was around.
Oh man, the tune-up and the Alpineer, yeah, they were way into it. You know, and it wasn't too much longer. You know, I'm thinking like you'd know better, but when did the Super Comp come out?
Super Comp was like 88, somewhere in there.
And then the Terminator was like 91, 92.
92 was the first Terminator. Yeah.
And so like I want to say it was maybe 94 or 95. You remember the Oslo Tele Breeze and the Tele Pro?
Totally. Yep. I saw.
Yeah, those.
That's so funny. That's another weird one. I don't know if we've talked about. Hinge.
That's a weird boot, but it was actually, boy, if you could keep that thing together, it skied really well.
That's like such a Telemark thing to say.
Ripped so many soles off those things.
Oh, you actually owned a pair? That's funny. I know.
We had
Go ahead.
Yeah, we were sponsored. Like I got like a sponsor. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah,
I got them at cost through the Tune-Up, which was the Backcountry bike shop in Gunnison when we were racing telly. And I went through like 6 pairs of those things.
That's so funny. Yeah. And yeah, I'll have to post I do have one at the shop, but it's like basically, I think that's where a Solo probably went out of the Telemark boot business because they recalled it was a plastic boot, had a really soft kind of where the bellow would be on a regular plastic boot, but there was actually a little bellow between the 75 millimeter toe and the actual toe of the boot, and a single bellow and then hinge toe, but it looked like a door hinge. But those things, yeah, they all broke. They got recalled, and a Solo was no longer in the plastic boot game. Oh, that's funny. Well, okay, so you get out to Western, and then you start doing some telemark racing at Crested Butte then?
So there was a gang of us from Western, and, we would start, this is about when the extreme comp thing was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say the first extreme comp at Crested Butte, the U.S. National Extreme Championships, was 94, 95. I want to say 95 because Doug Coombs won it that year. That was the first year.
Yep.
And it was a scene. Crested Butte was a super scene. It was like, Seth Morrison lived 2 doors down. And this is before Jackson had open boundaries. So Crested Butte was really kind of a hub of that extreme culture. And we were all kind of like not probably good enough or had the desire to be in that world. And so that's when we started touring a lot. And tele was how you toured. So we all started, tele skiing, and we'd ski at the resort and tour. And then we migrated to Monarch, which is 60 miles east of Gunnison and has great snow. It's a little hill. They had a race program, and we started tele racing. And at the time, tele racing was a thing, and there were some really good tele racers, like Heather Paul, lived in Crested Butte, and she was one. Well, I think she was in slalom. Like, I know she got a bronze medal at World Championships one year around then, maybe a little later. We would travel around and tele race around Colorado, and we would go to Utah and race snow. Went out to Tahoe for a FIS World Cup race out there. Back to Vermont, we actually got on planes to tele race, and we were way into it. We were all thinking it was going to be in the Salt Lake Olympics as a demonstration sport. Of course, that didn't happen.
Even back, yeah, that's funny. That seems to be the dream that keeps on going, that it's going to make it to the Olympics. I don't know. I've talked to some racers on here before. That's an interesting one. It's a tricky sport because it's timed and judged, and I'm sure there's a lot of other little nuances that make it hard. And there's like a million other sports like curling that people are probably going to watch instead of telemark racing. I don't know.
I think the thing with tele racing, the reason why it never became its own thing was it basically, with the exception of one event, it was just like alpine racing, but it was judged.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd get a second penalty if you didn't have a foot distance between your toe and heel. And so it was just kind of complicated, and it always seemed like there was home court advantage. Like the local hero would never get any faults, and you'd come to try to beat him, and you'd get a 10-second penalty. But the classic race was cool and interesting, and I'm sure you know about that from your experience and from some of your tele racer people that have been on here. But
yeah, and that's what they've moved. They tried to do that. The last Olympic push is they moved to a classic, a sprint classic, which is kind of shorter, but it was dual, so head to head, but one Rapaloosa at the end, which is like the big bank turn and everybody but that way there's this excitement. I think it was just trying to make it more spectator friendly.
So you'd try to get to the Rapaloosa at the same time?
Yeah, you try to
in front of your competitor.
Yeah, so it kind of had like that skier cross element, so you're running GS style gates. You got separate jumps, but then at the end it converges. So if you guys come in head to head, there's a chance you're gonna fight it out, picking your line in the Rapaloosa, and then in the skate section you're basically side by side, kind of like a Nordic finish, So
yeah. That was cool. That was my favorite event, just because it was so unique and so weird. So weird.
Doing it with the Nordic poles.
You're doing it with skate poles.
Yeah.
You're doing it with skate poles. You're racing, the one I went to national championships at Mount Snow in Vermont in 1990. And it started out as a downhill, and then it went into a Super G, and then it went off the first jump into a GS, off the second jump into a slalom, and into the Rapaloosh, and there was like a little circuit of skate skiing, and you're doing all of that with skate poles, so you're choking up on them for the whole downhill part, and then you're it's like, maybe that's as I explain it, I'm like, yeah, I'm really surprised it's not in the Olympics.
It's kind of, I don't know. It would be good. I understand the concept of like visibility, but it is fun. I mean, I follow a bunch of the Euro racers and stuff. I mean, there's some phenomenal athletes that are still doing it. And, the era you were probably racing at, there used to be a width limit on the skis underneath your foot. I don't know if you remember that, but
70 millimeters. I remember it was a really big deal. They changed the rule from 68 to 70, and that was like a huge deal.
Huge advantage.
I was thinking about this when I was on the chairlift today, thinking about this conversation, and one of my favorite pairs of skis I've ever had in my life was the Atomic Race Cap, and it was a fifth standard ski, so it was maybe it was 60 millimeters at the waist. It was 80, 60, 70.
Whoa.
80 at the tip, 60 at the waist, 70 at the tail. It was like a camber and a half. And you'd put some like extra blue on that thing, and it was like the best touring ski you'd ever been on. Such an awesome. I wish I'd never gotten rid of my pair because they were obsolete, when I finally got rid of them. But what a great ski that was. It's
cool to see how the gear, even just going through that conversation of, when you get to Gunnison, what boots are coming out, what people were racing on. I mean, it's kind of crazy because it doesn't seem that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but the gear was massively different than what we're skiing on now, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And tell me, didn't you go to Western under, was it a writing or English degree that you went there for? Or am I making that up? Or did you tell me
that? I had a political science major and a journalism minor.
Okay.
And worked on the newspaper there. And that's kind of where I got into ski writing, was not just kind of, that is where I got into ski writing.
Were you writing
for a column?
You were writing a ski column for the paper?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep. And we'd cover Western at the time, had an NCAA ski team. So we would cover that, and yeah. And then
where'd the writing go from there? Like, did you, I mean, that's just college stuff. I mean, did you, I guess I don't know, where did you go after that? Did you just like do writing stuff, freelance or?
Well, I think the thing that was really interesting about that time is, Derek Taylor, who, went on to be the editor of Powder, graduated just before me, and I became the sports editor when he left. And my boss was Keith Carlson.
Oh, no way.
And Keith and I we were on this tele racing team together. There was 4 of us. And Keith went out to intern at Powder Magazine and then got a job there, lived in his van in the parking lot in Dana Point, California. And then the next summer I did the same, and I stayed with him and then came back here and was a freelancer, and I started freelancing here and working at news, banging nails and ski patrol and doing the thing. So that's kind of where it all began, was that.
That's crazy. I guess, maybe I did know that. I mean, that's a pretty legendary era of Powder, and they also had it right. They were like literally on the beach, and then they ran a ski magazine. I feel like their office was like, they nailed it. But I mean, was Keith no, he wasn't the photo editor there. Did he stay there? I feel like I knew him from photography, but maybe
he was so that would have been 90. He was there for 6 or 7 years, maybe. He was the editor in chief for 3. And then went out on his own and has been doing mostly photography. That's always been his passion, was photography. And but he knew that his best way in was the writing side.
Yeah.
And Keith is a super hard worker and just kind of knows how to make it work.
That's funny. There's definitely some and I don't know if I knew he was a telly guy. There's a lot of telly heads that it crossed their path at some point. I don't know if they'll admit it, but
there's nobody of a certain age that's a lifer that didn't telly at one point.
Yeah.
If not exclusively, at least on the side. I mean, it was just, especially for touring.
Yeah.
It was just, Dawson strikes me as maybe the only guy, and I'm sure he's tellied, but he was.
Wait, who'd you say? Something faded.
Lou Dawson.
Oh, Lou Dawson. Yeah.
Lou Dawson. He was like Lou was, of course, the pioneer on the Dynafit program, doing all the 14ers and all that. And he would always, there's great stories about he and Dosty like hating on each other, even though they're tight buds. But yeah, I think everybody of a certain age, and I'm probably you're, I don't know how much younger than me you are, but, I think if I see a 20 something now, or even a 30 something, somebody's 35, who tours a lot and has been in the sport their whole life, they may not have ever tellied because they didn't ever get turned on to it. It wasn't a necessity to go touring, or it wasn't a part of the culture at the place they grew up skiing.
Yeah.
But not too long ago, I mean, I'm 47 and my generation was really a telly generation. If you were touring at all, that's what you were doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm 43, so you're just a little bit ahead of me. Here's an interesting question. I want to get your take on this. Is you having? I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, people. That's how Dosty always says it. It's like backcountry skiing grew through Telemark, and like you said the same thing. It's like if you were through this era, if you were backcountry skiing, you've probably crossed paths with a set of Telemark gear. And honestly, that era, 90s, early 2000s, it was widely accepted as like a legit way to go down the hill, and it kind of it's changed over the years. And I've had this conversation with other people on the podcast, but it's really interesting that it kind of went from this the really strong mountain people at the mountain were like telly people, and now it's like kind of the butt of the joke, and with not everybody, and it's, but I mean, is it just because AT came in the picture? What do you think? I mean, culturally it's shifted. That's what's so interesting to me.
I think the thing that AT did is it made backcountry attainable for people that had limited skills and maybe even limited passion. I don't want to be too pejorative, but there's a great volume of people that AT has turned on to the backcountry just because it's easy. Whereas before that gear was any good, and I'm talking like the Free Chief Freeride or even the predecessor, the DMR 2, was really the gateway in the US anyway to making touring more open to more people. And that's when I think the industry really recognized the growth potential there, because telly's hard. It's not easy. You have to be a certain kind of athlete to do it. And AT skiing is easy. You can take the same skills you have as an alpine skier and apply them to your AT gear and get down the hill. And I think, this conversation always goes one way, Josh, and that's the challenge with telly is nobody's innovating anymore, and that's because the dollars aren't. The industry doesn't see the dollars there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's there's an interesting conversation there for sure. And I actually agree, like the world that you live in, and I kind of want to get into that a little bit here with Backcountry Magazine and stuff, but it's we really do, and especially as the alpine world is growing, the snow sports industry grows larger, I guess, for lack of a better term at this point. I mean, I look at like what I do, and especially since you and I have met, I mean, we're on our own to figure it out for the most part, and to figure out how to get that dollar working again. And I think it's just going to be smaller companies. And the hardest part with that, of course, is it always comes with the boots, because people. That's
the nut of it.
Yep, that's the nut for sure, and I agree. And for that, you got to have somebody with the cash. But before we go down that road too far, I wanted you to tell a little bit about. I kind of want to hear your story too about the whole Backcountry Magazine experience and how you became the owner, because you weren't the one who started it, but where did that come in the picture from that freelance stuff we were talking about? And then like, how the hell did you end up buying a magazine? Because that kind of leads into how you and I met.
Yeah. So as I said, I came back to Vermont, and there was an opportunity at the time because there weren't a lot of correspondence for powder or couloir or backcountry in the East, because all of those magazines were based in the West, and I think they all how it is. People look at the Northeast and think it's kind of B team, whatever, and in many ways they're right. But the ski culture here is deep, and I'll just give you a quick example. I don't want to go too sideways, but like I'm a big ski racing fan, and I went down to the Women's World Cup race at Killington last weekend, and they wanted to control the volume of people there because of COVID, so they ended up keeping it under 10,000 a day, 10,000 fans a day at this Women's World Cup race. And then last night I watched the Super G at Beaver Creek, and there's like 8 people in the stands watching the men.
Really?
And that's just, yeah. I mean, there's not 8. There was probably 200, 300 maybe. And yeah, it was a replacement race. A lot of people didn't have it on their schedule. It wasn't the weekend, but still. That's the difference in the passion. And granted, there's a lot of people on the Eastern Seaboard, but the passion people have for skiing in New England it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's not just people going on vacation. It's people skiing in garbage bags in the rain.
That's the one I always bring up, and people are like, what? And I'm like, no, these people drive like 5 hours after work, rent a house with all their friends for the season, but you guys I want you to keep going, but you guys, I will say, have a much deeper appreciation, I think, for technical skiing too. And I think that's why the race culture, like you guys actually, none of us learn how to ski on edges out here. I mean, like a hard pack day is like pack powder. So
yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. I mean, to survive in the East, you gotta learn how to bend a ski. But anyway, so the story was I came back and was freelancing, and I was a ski patroller in the winter here at Smugglers, and I was a carpenter in the summers. And I knew eventually, and at some point in there, I was a newspaper reporter. And I got to the point where it was too much. I couldn't stay up and write at night and bang nails during the day. And I needed to jump, and you've been here. I know your life story, and it's hard juggling all these things, It can burn you out. And so you got to commit. You got to go one way or the other. And so I finally had enough work lined up to jump, and with the support of my wife Howie, who's always had the steady job, and God bless her, and we were like, it was maybe in July of 2002, I had enough work lined up for the other ski mags and some other building trade mags that I was ready to jump. And like the day later, maybe not the day, but within days, I got a call from the owners of Backcountry. Dave Harrower called me on the phone and said, and I'm like, why? And he goes, advertising revenue's not good, and we can't do it. And they started Backcountry in '94. It was Dave and Betsy Harrower and Brian Litz. And they were, ski bums really. But they were older. Dave was semi-retired from a career, non-skiing career. And I think he just decided it was his time, and they'd lost a couple key accounts, and that was it. And so one of the things I'd done when I came back to Vermont is establish a great relationship with a photographer named Chuck Wascutch, who has always been a Vermont ski bum, grew up in Connecticut, never really went west at all, but was like, he's to me like the quintessential ski bum. And he would shoot and I would write, and we had a great thing going. And I called Chuck when I heard this, and we're like, what a bummer. This is, too bad. We had decided to go to celebrate my jump. Holly, my wife, and a couple friends, we were going out to dinner to celebrate. And I ran into a buddy of mine who had started a winery on his family's farm here. And I told him the story, and he's a skier, climber, of the culture, and lived out west, patrolled, climbed Yosemite, was that guy. And he said, well, why don't you buy it? And this guy had more means than me, and I'm like, dude, like, what? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And he goes, write me a business plan and bring it, and I'll review it. And then you'll go. And so I did. I bought a book. I didn't go online. I bought a book. It was like a Mad Libs business thing where like
fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank, your business name here. And we did that, and and I found there was 1, 2, 3, 4 of us. We raised together $60,000, and we got of operating capital, and we got the Harrowers and Brian to owner finance the purchase, which was pretty short money. And 4 weeks later, we had our first issue at the printer.
Whoa, that's like,
and
what this was 2000?
2002.
2002. Jeez.
And then we went through the winter. We did a ski test at Mad River Glen. We did 3 issues that year. It was 4 total that they would do annually at the time. The agreement was they would do the first issue to keep it alive and meet the obligations of the reader and the advertiser, and we would come in and make the second, third, and fourth. And by March of that next year, we were out of money. Or nearly out of money. We had to, Chuck went back to waiting tables. I went back to banging nails for the summer and working this on the side, and slowly kept it going. John Howard came in the next year with a little bit more capital to again, kind of pay his own salary to sell ads. And then Justin Ryer was selling ads for us, and we all just but we all had other jobs, and we all just kept on trucking, and then we've just gone on from there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, man. I always like the behind the scenes stuff, because people, I don't know, especially in today's maybe more youthful culture, I think sometimes you don't hear those stories as often anymore. It just seems like, oh, it's there. Backcountry Magazine, I see it on the shelf. You know what I mean? And
we just had that conversation today. If you were to look in my office, it's not inspiring. And people think we're like a big company, and I can tell you this. Chuck and I wrote our contribution to our basis in this company is we each wrote a $5,000 credit card check. That was it. That was all we had.
Wow.
Yeah, like who knows what interest we paid on that, but like, I mean, but that was it. Like it was really from nothing. It was just pretty gritty.
Yeah. No, I love that. And God, I didn't even know you guys started it, or acquired it that early on. I mean, that's way earlier than I thought. Because so I guess you go on and you guys acquire Alpinist magazine at some point. What year was that? Maybe like 2005, 6 or something?
Well, I think the more interesting thing for your listener is we acquired Couloir.
Yeah. If we want to jump to that, for sure.
And Teleskier. But no, Alpinist, I think we bought Alpinist, and Alpinist had gone out of business. And we bought Alpinist in, I want to say 2000 and maybe December of 2008. 8 or 9, somewhere in there. I think it was 8.
Yeah, the only reason I thought about that is I saw it on the shelf yesterday. And I was like in a Whole Foods, and I was like, that was pretty cool. You know, like it was cool to see that. And then like you said, obviously the more pertinent probably to this particular conversation is you guys acquire Couloir magazine, who was started by Craig Dostie, who's been on the podcast multiple times. He's a character. Everyone loves Dostie. I always get messages about they're like, get more Dostie on there. He's a character. So
sure is.
So that was like, I want to say 2007, 8? Oh, 2006.
6, I think.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, walk me through that whole thing and kind of the behind the scenes of that deal. Or why get it? I guess is the more, you know.
I think we both realized, Dostie and us, John, Justin, myself, Chuck, that there wasn't enough room for both of us really to we could both survive, but it was hand to mouth at that time. And I think we're enough younger than Dostie that he kind of recognized that. And Dostie would tell you he's a man of faith and did a lot of praying on it, and that was his decision. So we bought him. I don't remember the terms of that deal. John led the charge on that. And the goal was that we would bring our readership together and have a bigger readership and be able to compete better with powder and skiing, free skier. And even then, you know, in 2006, I think a lot of the industry was not looking at, everybody's talking about backcountry now as like the big thing, the only growing part of the sport, blah, blah, blah. And it's crazy how much it's grown, but I don't think a lot of people then thought it was going to be this, you know, thought things in the backcountry world were going to be like a great investment on a business thing. It was because they loved to do it, you know, it's because we just loved it. And so Dostie came in, and he, you know Dostie well enough to know he is his own man, and we didn't fit well together. Like like his writing style, for instance, is he's really hard to edit because he likes to write long, and we like to write pretty tight. And if you over edit Dostie, he gets angry with you, and so, which is all good. And I will say, like, Dostie's one of my dearest friends, and he's been part of the family here. He comes to the gear test every year. He and my parents are tight. And he just called me yesterday, and I owe him a call. So that was how that went down. And I think it kind of worked, you know, and I think that community is the thing that was really different and interesting about the two readerships is Dostie was a teleskier and a televangelist, as you know, always from the beginning. In 1989, when he started Couloir, Chronicle de Couloir, and the Harrowers and Lifts were AT skiers and like early adopters. And I don't know if that was a California, Colorado thing. I think that's a simplistic way of looking at it, because Crested Butte, of course, is like the center of the tele universe for a while in the early days. But on the Front Range, people were AT skiing, and so, well, Backcountry did a ton of tele coverage too. They certainly wanted to talk about AT skiing, and Craig also talked about AT skiing, but he brought a devout Telly readership, and the letters we started getting. It was like, because Dossie's such a character and he's very free with his thinking and sharing thereof. He had a lot of readers that were just like him, that just, loved the guy and loved what he said and could do no wrong. And of course, Lou Dawson he was a columnist for Craig, and he's similarly opinionated. And we ended up with this very cantankerous, readership that came into the fold. And we still get letters every year from that readership asking us why we don't have any Telly product in the gear guide.
You're like, there's not a whole lot coming out, people.
And every year it's the same thing. Like, hey, we always talk about the product that's on the market and that's, available and new. We haven't done boots for a while because
there hasn't been a change.
Nothing has changed. It's like we could just run the same reviews from 2012 or whatever it is.
No, literally 2000. Yeah. Well, and the important piece of this whole puzzle of how I met you is when you acquired Coular, the defunct Telemark Skier magazine was in the mix. And
yes,
essentially you guys take Coular out of the picture to gain, merge the readership, and you guys resurrect Telemark Skier, and you guys bring on Eugene Buchanan, I want to say. Yep. As the editor for the first batch of issues. I think it was 2 or 3 issues, I guess. This is probably like 2008 or whatever. I think
we relaunched that right away, so that would have been maybe the 7, 8,
7, 8,
maybe 6, maybe even 6, 7. I don't remember.
I think it was 7, 8. I think. Jeez, a lot of time's gone by. Yeah, and Eugene did good. I honestly, by that point, what was funny is during that time, probably Eugene came on and is putting those issues out with you. I was nearing that like you said, like me personally, I remember trying to take the jump multiple times. Like you said, you're like, you just got to commit. And honestly, there's only been like a few times in my whole ski journey where, because, like a lot of us, I didn't come out of high school thinking, okay, I'm going to make a career out of skiing or something related to it. Never crossed my mind. But literally, while you guys are relaunching Telemark Skier, I'm basically kind of at the end of this. I think I just turned like 30. I'm like, dude, I got to figure something out. Like, I can't. This is too crazy. And I went and got a job again, and I enrolled in school. And I remember getting this phone call out of the blue from you. And you're like, hey, dude, I got your number or whatever. Like, you want to be the editor of Telemark Skier magazine? And I was like, it was crazy because I literally was trying to get out. Like, I was literally just like, I'm done. I don't know where else to go with this thing. And then you called me, and it was, I don't even remember. Do you remember how you got a hold of me? I don't even remember. Maybe I had met you at a trade show or something. I don't even remember.
I got your name from Megan Michelson.
Oh, geez. Okay.
I sat down with her at a trade show around that time because we were trying to figure out what to do with Telly Skier to like make it work, which, as you know, is like pushing a boulder up a hill,
Yep.
And that was at the beginning. That was a big, I think we were at the time thinking like, if Rockefeller would just come out with this NTN, for crying out loud, it would resurrect Telly or take Telly to the next level. And of course, we had to wait another several years for that. But, I asked her opinion, and she gave me your name.
That's crazy. Yeah, and I get this phone call, and literally, and I'm so grateful, like, because I remember telling you, I'm like, I don't know how to, I think I had maybe had one small piece published in somewhere along the line through that, prior to 2009. But you really took me under your wing, man. Like, and you're like, hey, you can be the face of this. You're enthusiastic about this. We'll teach you how to edit and write And I learned a ton from you, man. I will always appreciate that experience because, I mean, how often do you get the chance to make a print magazine? I mean, especially nowadays, I look back and I'm like, man, that's like, it's going to be like teaching somebody what it was like to make like a bronze tool, like as a Cro-Magnon man or something, So it's, I guess on that, I one of the things that comes to my mind too is, I mean, just that alone, print media, like, I mean, dude, props to you, man. Because when I saw a bunch of these other guys, Powder's gone, Skeen's gone. I mean, that leaves a lot open to you guys. I mean, what do you think? Where is print headed? I don't know. I don't want to make it such a cliche question. You know what I mean? But
no, it's fair. It's a fair question.
Where do you think it's going?
Wherever I want it to go. No, I don't. I don't know. I think about the changes we've made in the products over the years to meet the market and keep our values intact. And we don't do like sponsored content. We don't do any of that stuff.
Thank God.
But I've never found. I like to read. Okay, at the end of the day, I like to read, and I know a lot of the people like to read, and I don't care what the subject is. I read every day, a lot, and the best way to read is print. And especially long form stuff. And long form used to mean 20,000 words, and now long form means 2,000. But regardless, how often are you sitting in front of your computer or on your phone reading, a 3,000 or 4,000 word article? The last thing I want to do at the end of the day after sitting in the office is sit down in front of my computer and read 2 hours. So as long as there's people out there that are like me in that way, I think print's going to be fine. Nobody's going to get rich in it, but that was never the goal anyway. We have, the advertising is a challenge, and it'll be interesting to see how long that holds up, like how long advertisers continue to want to reach our audience. But I can tell you that I think it really works, because especially in niche little markets like ours, I think about some of the big corporate apparel companies, for instance, and they were early in the movement to, digital advertising, sponsored content, social media type advertising, and the analytics you get from that are awesome. You can go upstairs and report to your boss if you're the guy that makes those decisions and say, here's all the stuff right here. Whereas if you're buying a print ad, it's harder to make that case, especially in this age. So some of the bigger corporate VC-owned, venture cap-owned apparel companies, as an example, have left these niche markets on the print side. And who's moved into those markets are the companies like Flylow and True and Stio. And if you were to talk to Dan at Flylow, he's like, it was like an open door. And I guarantee you, because the people that love to read and pay us good money for that privilege, if you will, to read what we do, they respect who's in there as an advertiser, and they support them. Way more than some, athlete on Instagram, or, there may be value, there may be an opportunity to buy something through that way. And yeah, you might get a good deal and whatever, but at the end of the day, how affiliated are you really to that brand? How connected are you? So I'm hopeful that there's a lot of brands that are out there still, and it's, Backcountry, we took a massive hit last year with advertising revenue because everybody's freaking out during the COVID, but it's largely pretty near 100% rebounded, which was better, frankly, than we anticipated. And so I think, and we just launched Backcountry in France.
Oh, no way. Really?
Yeah, we just launched the French edition.
Huh.
It's a smaller format, really thick paper. It's like a large book size. I haven't even seen a copy of it yet. It's on the way right now. But we were shocked at the interest from advertisers. And our partner over there is just a journalist. He's not an ad sales guy. He's not a sales guy. He doesn't know business at all, but just has the passion. And that's been really interesting. We're doing Alpinist. We're doing a Korean translation of Alpinist. And again, I think people are like, that's been really cool. Will it work over time? Will it hold up business-wise? I don't know. Mike Rogie relaunched Mountain Gazette.
Yeah, I know. I've been following that. It's a great, interesting.
It's a great story, and I think, and Mike's a master. He's like you. He's got a great way of communicating through social media. He's got an evangelist's mentality, and the question will be like over time, how can he keep that passion to keep that company alive as it needs to grow, and he needs to get some help or hire employees and stuff. That's really the trick.
Yep.
It's how it is. It's like once you plane up, you're like, okay, I'm planed up. Now what?
We're not supposed to pull that curtain back, bro. No. No, I mean, how many? I mean, seriously, think of the last 20. I'm sure you can. I know I can speak for myself. You pull that curtain back, the last 20 years, there's a lot of times where I've gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, now what?
Dude, I don't think that ever goes away if you're a founder and an owner. I think because as soon as that goes away, you either lose the passion or you recognize you got to make a change. The decision, you got to. But if you're not sleepless a little bit, maybe this is just me. I have some friends that are just really chill. They have corporate jobs, even keeled all day long, and I love them because that's the way they are, and I'm not that way. I'm always cranked up about something, and I guess that's maybe why it's worked, because I'm a survivor, and every day in here we're trying to figure out what we're going to be doing 2 years out. Like, what's the market going to look like? And the hardest part of COVID was we were so busy doing triage on the day-to-day, wondering if we're going to survive, like any business was, that we couldn't think down the road, think to the future, and imagine what that could be. And that was so brutal for a dreamer type like myself to go through. And now we're starting to feel like the old days when we're looking down the road. We're imagining new things, new projects, new products, new partnerships. And it feels pretty good. Will it work? I have no idea. But you know what? The other morning, I was in here at 5:30 in the morning on a Monday morning, and I was proofing the gear guide. This is the other morning. It's probably 3 months ago, and I was sitting there, and I was actually really psyched to be here, and because a lot of the copy I'm reading for the first time, because I am not hands-on with the products as much anymore. And I started counting on my fingers, and it's my 20th gear guide.
Wow.
And when I was like, the reason I was there at 5:30 was because I couldn't sleep, so I had to come in and work, and I was like, so maybe I shouldn't be so afraid, because it's never been easy. It's always been hard, and I've been doing it for 20 years. So I must have something figured out. There must be something going for me. And that was really soothing, actually. And I've leaned on that moment a lot this fall, because it's COVID especially has made things really tough. But everybody's like, wow, print's got to be really hard. Wow, COVID's got to be really hard to run a business through. Wow. And I'm like, yeah, it's been brutal. And then I think about back to the days when we'd lay ourselves off and go back to the job site And I was like, well, that wasn't very easy either. Like, hey, everybody, I got to take a call at noon to interview, some ski star or something like that. They don't know I'm putting panels on a timber frame.
Seriously. Well, yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, and I think a lot of, I have this hope in humanity that like people are going to kind of harken back to these crafts, like you said, long form writing, and not like the Instagram sort of thing. Like, but I think, people that it's a craft. I mean, like I said, I didn't know how to write for the most part when I met you, and you taught me a craft, and, I don't know if I'm much of a better writer now, but, I think those are things that need to get passed on, and the experiences, and, as a reader too, I know as I've gotten older, I definitely read more, and I see, it resonates a lot what you're saying. It's like, I don't get that staring at a computer, and maybe it is smaller companies, like the Mike Rogies and the Mountain Gazette and the Backcountries and the Telemark skiers, whatever we're trying to do over here, and
I think when it comes to tele, it's a lot like print magazines. I think that's what you're telling me, and you're right. It's a craft, and you're a maker. You're a maker of things. That you have a maker's mind, whatever it is, writing stories or making a business. And I think tele, I was thinking about this 2 days ago. I was out skiing in my field on this light touring gear that I've been doing that in that field since I was like very little. I made a couple tele turns down this hill, like 10 inches of snow on top of grass. And, I was tele skiing, and I wasn't tele skiing. I wasn't a sponsored athlete in this rockin' industry that was going gangbusters back in the, 90s or early 2000s, whatever. But I was making the turn, and that gear, that's the one place where the gear is still kind of cracking, is that light touring stuff, these skin skis and some of these boots. They're not like big burly alpine boots that cost $500,000 to brick one mold for one size. They're like kind of synthetic those Fisher BCX 8s.
Mm-hmm.
that you can also rip the sole off all the time, which I did later in that day. But I'm like, that's it, right? And maybe we just need to get back to basics a little bit. Forget about the resort access or riding a resort on bigger gear. I see you out there in your woolies, and there's something special about that. And New England people still get that here, I think.
Yeah, I do think, if we were to talk about the future, and that's always been the question. I mean, 20 years ago, that was the question, what's the future of Telemark? But, and since I was working with you guys in Vermont, back, that's crazy. Almost 9 years ago. Geez, dude, that's gone by quick. But, I think what's been interesting is go from that world, the media side, and then kind of going into where I've had my own retail shop. That's really gotten us in touch with how diverse the marketplace is for tele, which is even more fascinating than I thought, and I think you're hitting on it. And it's hard because there's very few resources and access to resources, in terms of gear or trying gear or whatever. But there's an array. There's like a really dedicated resort group. There's a really dedicated like backcountry. There's a small dedicated group of like mountaineering type people. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of like people like you're talking about. And honestly, I think that light, old, for lack of a better term, kind of old school gear, whether it's scaled, double camber, low cut leather, low plastic, that's there too. And I think honestly, you're starting to see people sort of have a that in their quiver, like, and it's like, you know, and we've obviously always pushed that at our shop because it's like, we like the retro and it's fun, but now you're seeing a lot of like that scaled stuff, and I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like
it's a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug.
Well, and just moving, and I was never, I think it's that young men's mentality of like when I, especially pre even meeting you, early 2000s, it's like you want to push Telemark to be like this new innovative thing, and that's cool. But I also I can see the value of kind of like what you're talking about with your parents, like going back and having that be part of your experiences, the A to B travel, where you might have the Telemark technique available at your disposal, but it's not like you're going up to just go down. It's a movement. It's mountain travel. I think I agree with you. I think that's going to be a piece of the puzzle for sure. And depending on where you live, it might be like that's your setup. I
think that, to me, the thing I'm waiting for is, I've been really turned on by these like Scarpa Alien boots, these Ronda race boots. And if they just had a bellows, if you could, that's a tele boot with a stiff sole. With these super light carbony skis, I mean, it's so close. Everything is there. It's not going to drive a massive ski or even a big ski, but it still can ski really well. And we just got to get that lower made.
Yeah. It's funny because the, I actually agree with you more on the kind of modifying and bringing back like the 3-pin not bring that back, but what I'm saying is like kind of that rolly hill type of terrain with light equipment. I actually agree with you more there than with the lightweight backcountry hardcore touring rando guy. And I'm just saying, from the amount of people we see, it's right. Kind of like this fallacy that like, if we have a light boot, everyone's going to Telemark. And I'm like, most of those people left for alpine touring. And if they're just getting introduced to the backcountry, they're probably going to, if they're an alpine skier, they're probably going to get an AT setup. Like you said, it's easier, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you and I could talk forever about this, and maybe we could do it again.
No, I would love to have you back on. It's fun talking to you. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? I don't want to close. I just like close it off. I'm like,
I don't know. I think about no. I get back to that Oslo boot, right? That Tele Pro and Tele Breeze that killed Tele for that brand. Previous to that boot was the Extreme, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
There was an Extreme Pro and an Extreme Pro Plus, and they had buckles. Oh, and anyways, they were leather with buckles, but yeah,
they were leather, but they had plastic inserts, and they were quite tall.
That's correct.
Not as tall as a Super Comp. But what I think in all of this that it's been lost is the leather boots coming out of Italy that were so great, right? Because they were too expensive at the time. You remember they're expensive. It's, to get a nice leather boot, it's $300-400. That's nothing by today's standards. Mm-hmm. And if you could, it's almost like what we need to go back to is a boot like that with some maybe better technology in the sole area, but it's a leather boot with some plastic inserts. It doesn't need to be light, but it can drive some of these modern skis really well, because you don't need a Goliath Terminator kind of boot to bend these modern skis. They have these great shapes and everything. And we have the bindings. The bindings exist. They're awesome. And I think people would pay $800 for a boot like that. Would it cost that? Would it be? Maybe they'd pay $1,000. I mean, that Alien boot, that Alien RS is like $1,100.
Yeah.
And people are buying it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm getting out of my depth here, because my friends in Montebelluna are shaking their head if they're listening to this. But
no, I don't know. I see it as the quiver play more. I've thought about that too, though. Like, if you could actually get a good leather boot, you can't even buy anything equivalent to it in a Solo.
Oh no.
Extreme at this point, which is literally why the soles keep getting pulled off ours. I keep thinking, I'm like, maybe that's my retirement. I'm just going to be like a cobbler, a cobbler in the woods fixing all the leather boots. Oh man. Well, let's get you back on again, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and it's fun talking to you, man. And I know you're a telemarketer at heart, even if you're not always on the gear. So it's always good to chop it up a little bit and see what's going on.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll have you on.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep. Thanks, brother.
Bye-bye.
Those conversations are great, and they're very personal to me when I get to bring people that have helped me along the way in my telemark journey, if you will. And can't thank Howie enough for the opportunities that he provided me as a kind of young man coming out of trying to be a ski bum and figure it all out, and then giving me a chance to be the editor of a magazine about a topic that I am incredibly passionate about. What's kind of a dream come true, and sort of out of the blue. So I just want to thank him and let him know how grateful I am for that opportunity. And I learned a lot about many, many things that have continued on in my life, and ultimately for him giving me the opportunity to acquire Telemark Skier Magazine and carry that torch forward until today. So it's great. It's allowed me to do some amazing things in my life, both in traveling, meeting friends, gaining perspective on the world and whatnot. So I just wanted to say that real briefly and just thank him for his support over the years. And yeah, one of those things that's come out of all of those years is Free Heel Life, the retail shop. And we would love to be your preferred telemark shop wherever you live in the world. And you can shop with us online, freeheellife.com. You can come into the shop Tuesdays through Fridays, noon until 7, or Saturdays, 10 until 7, closed Sundays and Mondays. Or you can always reach the team at customer service at freeheellife.com. We would love that. And thank you for supporting us over all these years so that we can grow, give people jobs, and keep Telemark moving forward. If you're more on the reader side of things, as we hope you all are, you can find more culture, news, gear reviews, all that good stuff on telemarkskier.com. We would encourage you to become a subscriber over there. It's not a lot. There's both a monthly option and an annual option. And that is part of the Free Heel Life family and what helps support all of the good stuff that you're seeing, whether it's podcasts, YouTube videos, paying people so they can mount skis. It all goes into the same pot, right? Thank you for all the support there for all you subscribers out there that are already part of Telemark Skier Magazine. We love and appreciate you. If you want to hit me up directly, podcast at freeheellife.com. I would love to hear from you. So, thank you for listening. As always, if you're an Apple Podcast listener, drop a review, as I'm always asking for. It really does help, and it helps get it out there to other people. And I always like to see if you're digging it. I think we're maintaining a 5-star review so far, but I especially like reading the 5-star rating, but I especially love reading those reviews. It means a lot to me. All right, protectors of the turn, Free Heel Lifers, Telemark family, brothers and sisters of the sacred turn. Until next week, I hope wherever you are at in the world, you will spread Telemark always with all your friends and everyone on the mountain. Talk to you later. See ya.